We're back. Welcome to episode 513 of the Red Dirt Agronomy Podcast. I am Dave Deken, and have we got a fun episode for you. It's been a very busy season for the doctors. Well, they've been out planting crops and growing them and, just sciencing in general. Well, we were finally able to catch up with them and see what's been happening around the Southern Great Plains since we last spoke. And more importantly, we get an update on what all of this moisture and cooler weather over the past weeks mean for the crops. Before we do all of that, I want to invite you over to our website. It is reddirtagronomy.com. You can find out more information about the guys, listen to past episodes, and leave us a note right there at reddirtagronomy.com. Before we dive in, let's kick things off like we usually do with a quick trip around the table for an introduction to the dream team of dirt and everything that grows from it. Let's start with Oklahoma State University Extension Precision Nutrient Management Specialist.
Finally, it was a slow roll. I mean, we sat and we stared at our row crops. Just seemed like doing nothing.
Dr. Brian Arnall. And next to him is Oklahoma State University Extension Cropping System Specialist.
I'm sure if you ask Jason, he's forgot more about eggs than any of us have ever learned. So Brian's laughing because it's probably true.
Dr. Josh Lofton. Let's kick off this conversation that we recorded this past Friday, June 19th, 2026. You, my friend, are listening to the Red Dirt Agronomy Podcast. Wheat kind of ran the gamut of all of that, and then summer plantings. You guys have been all over the planet, really. I mean, Brian's been to Brazil. Josh has been to Bixby.
And the Panhandle. No, he didn't go to the Panhandle.
I didn't go to the Panhandle.
I've been to the Panhandle. Yeah. It's still there. Yeah, in one form or another. But no, yeah, everybody's kind of been going in their own directions with all of that. So it's good to actually get the band back together and kind of get caught up on what's new. So, who wants
beautiful winter morning in June?
It is chilly. It's
compared to 95. I'll give you guys it's chilly.
Well, so I was up in Miami last week, and Brent Rindle was saying that he hasn't been able to harvest because it's been so wet.
Mm-hmm.
And it has been. I mean, he was saying that some of his fields up there, he's had 8 to 10 inches in that field over the past month.
I think that's his field too. That he's probably got his herbicide research work in because, that helps.
There's no herbicide anymore.
It's all gone.
It's all gone. Actually, surprisingly, it's not. It's still doing a pretty good job.
Was that where you were sending me the sorghum pictures from, or is that somewhere else?
What do you mean?
You were sending me some pigweed control.
Oh, no. That's up at old buddy Jason Warren's place.
Oh, well, he would have the pigweeds.
Yeah, he does have plenty of pigweeds at that.
How is old Jason? We haven't seen him in a while.
Well, if you know what he's saying, he's doing pretty good.
His dad, or my dad, has been his.
I was about to say, you should check in with your
Yeah.
dad. He probably interacts with them more.
Yeah, and in fairness, Jason probably interacts with my dad more than I do because they're buddies now. My dad does the polling things at the elections and such, and he's been fortunate one way or another. Fortunate, I'll use that word just as a placeholder, but to have Jason's precinct, and so they've had some great conversations. I'll get a text from Jason, hey, I just talked to your dad about eggs for this long, and I told him several times that's not my area expertise. But that doesn't matter to my dad, and they enjoy each other, so that's good.
I'm sure if you ask Jason, he's forgot more about eggs than anybody else, any of us have ever learned. So Brian's laughing because it's probably true.
Yeah. So
no comment.
Anyway, so let's go back. Josh, why don't you kick off? What's new in your areas of expertise? You've been planting summer crops, and how do they look across the state?
We're dealing with these weird things this summer, Dave.
Yeah,
and it's called rain.
That's really throwing a wrench. Yeah.
No, I mean, when we talked about it in the early spring, that we were really dry in the early spring, and the wheat was taking it on the chin and everything else, and we were really cautious about how we were going to move into the summer crop season unless it started raining.
Yeah.
Well, it started raining, and I think it has been friendly enough to not be what is typical, like an April and May rain period, to where it just soaks the ground for days on end, and then we just stop getting rain. For the most part, at least looking at the 10-day forecast today, we have a decent chance of rain throughout the rest of the 10-day forecast. Maybe not out in the Panhandle, southwest Oklahoma, but that's expected.
Southwest got rain last night.
Well, I mean, they don't know what to do with that. But it seems like the other parts of the state are getting maybe a little bit less overall, but I feel like it's spread out more. We're getting a lot more half-inch rains over 2 weeks than we're going to get a 3-inch rain one time this month. And so it might not look very impressive over the month as far as how much is accumulating comparatively, but I think they've been really nice on being able to allow us to do our normal activities and still carry those crops on. Because there's a lot of places that we've had crops germinate with a rain. Yeah. And they look a lot more impressive than I thought they would, because I didn't think there was any moisture underneath them. Well, turns out there was plenty of moisture. We just had to get them there, and these rains have kind of gotten them there.
So I've heard this word thrown around many times, throughout my career. But is this
rain?
Yeah, exactly. Is this what they call a timely rain? I've heard timely rain used before.
I mean, we've probably got as. It depends on where you are in the state. Yeah. Like you were saying, up there in Northeast, I don't think they would agree that these are timely rains.
Yeah.
But I think fortunate enough, they haven't been so widespread that folks were able to get wheat out of the ground in a lot of areas.
Right.
Not as bothered as they have been in the past. So I think it kind of helps that. Got a lot of folks making a lot of double crop decisions, as we're talking here today on what they're going to do as the wheat's out of the ground. We got a good forecast for rain in the 10-day for a lot of north central Oklahoma. So there's probably a lot of double crop decisions getting made last week and then this coming up week. So a lot of decisions still yet to be made. It's... we've had some warm days, but we've been still yet. I mean, we talked about how cold it was. We had that cold front kind of come through Stillwater yesterday. And then, you look at this weekend coming up, and it's going to be in the 90s, but then next week it's going to be in the mid 80s again. And it's like, the first week of July coming up with it rolling into July in the 80s is just crazy to me. So,
perfect for the corn hitting, though.
Yeah, corn's hitting about the right stage, because we're going about perfect into pollination for some of that early planted corn. So when you say corn needs to be in the 80s, it's what it's going to get this year. So 70s and 80s is going to be dang near perfect for corn. So it's good. I mean, but Brian, we have some April planted soybeans that are already flowering. Yeah. I mean, we're moving.
Yeah. Finally, it was a slow roll. I mean, we sat and we stared at our row crops, just seemed like doing nothing.
Yeah. Well, and we'll probably get back to it. Our crops are small, and we'll probably get back to it today, but it's not a bad thing. So, at least compared to the type of growth pattern we've had in the last couple of years, and at matching what the environment, what Mother Nature has given us, it's a lot better to be relatively small right now than having 4-foot tall soybeans running into July, which, I mean, we all know can be, I think I've been here 11 years since I got back from Louisiana, and I think 1 year we've had a really nice July. Every other year has been hot and dry, which, is just what you would expect in July is hot and dry. So,
well, before we get into that discussion, I wanted to give a chance for you to share, what's some of your projects you're working on. You are the cropping systems, all things but wheat. What are some of your projects you have in the field as far as research goes?
We're doing a little bit of everything, and we started a big project a couple of years ago, doing some grazing stuff before Brian Pugh, which we hired to be a state forage specialist, kind of stepped in. So we're kind of wrapping up some of those projects. I think one of the ones I'm really interested in is one of my students. It's her little pet project of starting out a long-term crabgrass and small grain rotation and looking at nitrogen management across that, and production, and how small grain production impacts the crabgrass and how the summer crabgrass production impacts the small grains then. So it's one of those things that, you tell some growers that we're doing that, and they're like, that's not farming. And it's like, well, but the other half of the state, that is a big rotation for them. So and it's a good moneymaker, but just due to the fact that it doesn't cost a lot, and you get a lot of back end out of it. So hopefully getting some information more on the lines of how those two crops are interacting in their interchange, and then how we need to be managing our forage production on the small grains coming out of last year I think we cut tons and tons of tons off that crabgrass. Yes. I think we were in the mid-teens to high teens on some of that, and so a lot of crabgrass getting cut. And so obviously to grow that much biomass, we're using a lot of nitrogen. So how much do we actually need to go on the back end? The interesting thing we saw this year is how much we grew on the small grains drastically impacted how fast that crabgrass established. Yeah. And I think it's going to be very impactful for this first cutting, is that the more small grains we produced, especially on some of those small grains, just did not grow the crabgrass. And so we trailed behind on some of that crabgrass production. And what it ended up doing is it ended up allowing some weeds to come in that are going to have to be managed alongside that. So it's kind of a back and forth on maybe which one you want to manage the most and have the most impact. But beyond that, we did lose our row crop weed scientists, so we've kind of picked up, the program's kind of picked up some of those things, doing a little bit of herbicide work in grain sorghum and soybeans, both in early planted soybeans and double crop soybeans, as well as looking at some the two grass systems, the double team and the iGrow sorghums, and how yield is impacted within those systematic approaches, and then looking at a new product, about all I can say, on pigweed control, that hopefully shows some good promise. So I think there's a lot of fun things coming down the pipe that are getting close to kind of wrapping up this phase. And I always think it's really interesting because these programs go in phases, and then we're about to wrap up a lot of these phases and then kind of start moving on to the next phase. Where that's going to go, I have no idea, but we'll see when we get there.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing about what we do, is that it cycles through, whether we get a lot of projects that go and then phase out, or just have a continuum. I think I basically phased out a little bit last year and got a lot of new revamping and new crew coming in, and so it kind of goes in waves when you talk about what we do, and some of it's where our funding's from, and some of it's where the students are, and how we're working through those.
I think that's you've been in this part of your career, but I've finally gotten to the part of my career that a lot of my projects are either something that growers wanted to do or see, or there's something the students wanted to do, or they're how we pay for the students. So it's a lot. I don't want to say it's a lot more fun to do it this way, it is. But it is really fun, because then you have somebody beside you that's heavily invested in it, and having a partner that, even if nobody else really is interested in the outcomes of this research, at least two people are.
Yep.
So
not wrong.
So as far as the crop by crop goes, are you seeing an increase in interest and or acres in one summer crop over another?
I think the spring played a big role in what we saw this year. I think there was a lot of the spring in the markets. I think there was a lot of there was probably a lot of interest in corn just due to how well it performed last year, and how excited some folks were about it that did last year. So I think a lot more corn acres went in than probably we were expecting. If you caught those rain, you probably went in and got some corn. And I think at least as of now, what are we, the 19th of June, I think a lot of corn looks really good.
Yeah.
And especially if we do have a week in pollination week that is in the 80s, I think we're going to get some really good pollination, and then it's going to come, really to the next 3 weeks on if we continue to stay relatively cool and wet. I think we'll have some really good looking corn this year. So much so that I caution whether we fertilized enough for it than we have in previous years, because we potentially over fertilized for the crop last year, and I think we're kind of maybe under fertilized for it this year, depending on how it goes.
I think we under fertilized because we had great potential. Then it got hot, and then it ended up we over fertilized because we couldn't finish out, because that early was such a strong early go with a lot of moisture. If I think about my stuff up at Ponca, going into Tassel, I would have told you I under-fertilized significantly.
Yeah, and that's kind of...
Then it didn't pan out because we got too much heat at the end.
Yeah, that's kind of where we're at right now.
Yeah.
So, the next 3 weeks are going to tell a really big tale on corn. But, we, like we said earlier, we got soybeans that are flowering. We got sorghum that's starting to head. So we're kind of moving that direction on all of these crops. And I think soybean acres... surprisingly steady, if I were to say, if not maybe a little bit up. I'm just surprised because of how many zeros guys have taken in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
That it's been steady, but I think marketing-wise, it probably was the best looking option. It was kind of the spring. It was like, what is the least worst option than what the best option was. So... And a lot has happened politically since we planted, so I have some interest in where prices are going to head within the next 4 to 6 weeks to go with marketing.
So are you hearing the folks that got the wheat out? Because we've had the earliest wheat harvest that I can remember. We were cutting wheat in Kansas May 23rd, May 24th, which I don't know if I've seen. A lot of that ground, I haven't talked to a lot. I've talked to a lot of folks. I haven't heard the discussions about double crops. I would have thought at that point we have moisture. Have you heard about a lot of beans going in on that early wheat, or have you even heard much at all?
Not really. I think the acres that get double crop are probably going to be planted to double crop. I think there's some folks that are holding out to see what corn leafhopper does, to see if they go into corn. Like I said, we're still in a really weird marketing area to where I think some folks are like, I'm almost better off just getting ready for wheat again next year, and let's go one more year without a summer crop. And I think with how good some of the wheat was, I think that's not a bad option. I know some people did not have very good wheat crops at all, but there are some folks that had pretty decent wheat crops. So I don't think it's a bad option.
Air seeders have not been that active to me driving up and down the interstate. Usually you see them chasing the combines,
especially with how wet it's been.
Exactly right. We've had great moisture for a double crop, but I've not seen the activity as far as air seeders and stuff. Not that it's not happening, but
what I do applaud the growers for right now is they're like, okay, I have this many acres in full season. I'm just going to spend my money on these and hope that that's what brings me in, because there's a lot more guys that I'm hearing going in grain sorghum fertilizing mid-season, going in that went into corn mid-season, or and are maybe thinking, well, if I had a decent wheat crop and I don't want to risk summer crops because of the last 2 years I put in double crop and it really just didn't pan out for me, and if I put in a double crop I'm out of wheat next year, maybe it's time to address some lime issues and some phosphorus issues and potassium issues, and I will be very interested at end of June and 1st of July how much hay grazer goes in. We were not concerned with hay 6 months ago, and I think there are some places that are a little concerned with hay this now. So I'll be interested in how much hay grazer goes in the next several weeks to get things ready for this winter, where we might have blown through some hay stores that we didn't think we were going to, because we were in such a good spot in January.
And the Bermuda grass has finally kicked on, but it's been another one of those seasons where, due to the drier start, I don't think everybody I've talked to, that Bermuda grass was a little bit of a slow roller, and like a little bit cooler, right? The corn was slower. When your corn is coming out of the ground a little bit slower, you can almost bank that Bermuda grass is not going to just get up and running, and so it's been a little bit slower. Those first cuttings were down a little bit, but I do think this run, the latest run that we're doing another cutting soon, is that second cutting looks really good.
But the further east you get, because our station manager over in Bixby, he's got a place where he runs Bermuda. He said this is the first time in like 3 years he's been able to get that first cutting off because it's just been flooded or too cold before. So I mean, he for a first cutting historically it might be a little low, but I think from a tonnage standpoint, where we are, and a quality standpoint, we might be a little bit better off than we have been in the last couple of years. Maybe not as much in the west, but definitely in the east, they've not had as much just flooding rains to get us there.
And you kind of answered that already, as far as like, was this the season that you thought you would be getting weather-wise whenever the seed went in the ground, and you kind of
we couldn't get the seed in the ground when this season started, and then we did.
Planted pretty dry in a lot of places, and I mean we're struggling to just find some place that's dry enough right now to finish out the season. So I mean it's a great. I would much rather have a nice cool or drier spring, and then guarantee that if I get something in and up, that come June I'm going to have moisture. Yeah. What is going on with my...
With what?
What?
Are you hearing voices?
Crackling.
How's that? Is that
there
better?
It goes.
Oh,
yes.
It's the...
Technology.
Stop with
technology. Sorry.
Dave.
Well, it was kind of fun to watch you do that, though.
It's like I was hearing something from another land.
I'm like, Josh, it's the headphones, man. That's why we're able to hear.
Oh, I don't know. I had those on.
We were just talking. Because I asked that because on the wheat side, the old saying of dust it in, break the bin, well, that didn't quite pan out this year. I didn't know if that's what we were expecting from the summer crop side, dust it in. Hey, we actually caught some rain.
Look at Dave doing a perfect lead into something we planned and didn't tell him about. Right?
Oh, did we not tell him about it?
No, we have not told him about
this. Oh, this is going to be fun.
I mean, that leads in perfect. So Josh wrote a blog that we're going to push on OSU and PK as soon as we get out of this one, out of this podcast.
Anyway,
why don't you go through that?
Yeah, so I've gotten a lot of calls this year on folks that are 50-50 on whether they like the crops this size. There's a couple of them that really like small crops, and then there's a lot of them that are like, it is miniature compared to the previous years. And it is. Yeah. It is very small compared to the previous years. And there's a back and forth on it. And I talk about it in the blog, is that there's a scientific benefit to being really big. The more biomass you have, the more photosynthesis you can complete. The more photosynthesis you can complete, the more sugars, the more yield, right? That's the whole process within the plant. As long as things are unlimiting, that is the key kicker, is that as long as things are not limiting, that's how the process works. Unfortunately, that is never the process how it works in Oklahoma. And so we straddle this line with how do we want the crop to be yield stable, is I think the term I use in it, versus high yield potential. And it's the stability yield that the smaller I am come July, let's say, Dave, here in 3 weeks, 4 weeks, we just, or here, this next rain shower opportunities that we have in this next 10 days, this is the last one we see until August.
Oh, yeah.
And very real potential. Yeah. Very real potential. And if we have a 4-foot tall soybean plant that's got 200 flowers on it, and it's right now got a ton of moisture, and it's got a ton of potential, and it's going to try to fill every single one of those, and that's a lot of biomass to maintain, because now that I've put on fruit, I need the vegetation to maintain that fruit, so I really don't want to start abandoning leaves and having those fall off. So I have to keep have to keep sucking water to keep, the lights on kind of thing on that plant. Now we have 2.5 foot tall crop. That water need, that water demand is so much smaller than what it was before. And it, from counting flowers that I've done, I don't think we're that far behind on total potential yield right now. We will be if things were unlimited, but I don't think we're that far behind on where we can make a really good crop. So there's some challenges that come along with it. We have not canopied a lot of rows yet, especially on some wide planted soybeans. Really? We have some 30-inch soybeans that have not canopied rows, and that's going to be a weed management challenge now that we're heading into reproductive growth. So I mean that, and I don't expect them to, because they're still 8 to 10 inches off lapping rows, and at least some ones that we have here south of town, they're not going to. 15-inch and 7.5-inch look great. Lapped over, they're going to do great. They're going to hold that moisture in. The 30s aren't, but again, we don't need as much rain now. Like we're literally at that stage to where one more rain in July, and we probably have carried these crops into August. Now we're going to need a lot in August, but if we get one good rain in July and we don't just get unreasonable with temperatures, then we'll probably be okay. Sorghum's that way too. I mean, we the last couple of years we've been like chest high sorghum. It is
huge,
hip high sorghum, and it's starting to boot in a lot of places. So I mean, it is much smaller, but that's really okay. And it's one of those things that a lot of the folks that have been through a lot of years in Oklahoma, they're okay with these small crops. And you are the same way with wheat. You like a very small wheat heading into spring. It's going to grow its stuff. It's going to get its biomass. And we might not hit 80 bushel soybean at this potential. We probably weren't going to hit it anyway.
No.
And so I'd much rather have a consistent 45 than some places hitting 50 or 60 and some hitting in the mid-teens.
So you've talked beans, which if we go back to cotton's going to be the same way. I want a smaller plant. That's why we use plant growth regulators. We keep it down. We might stress it. Don't want to get too vegetative, and we can end up yielding much more with a smaller plant. Indeterminate. So your soybean, your cotton, even with wheat and sorghum, we have the capability to tiller. We have those secondary actions to gain yield if environment maintains and stabilizes. What about corn? What's your 2 cents or your gut on corn and size of biomass?
So, I mean, corn's one of those that even with it being cooler, I think we've gotten taller corn comparatively than we've gotten compared to the previous years. I think we've gotten corn that looks a lot similar than we have got soybeans that look similar, because corn has a cooler temperature threshold and it's been in the ground longer. It's had some of that moisture, so I think that it grows. It has some flexibility and it has some drought recovery ability. I would venture to say, I think kind of the way you're going, it does not have as much as some of our indeterminate crops, especially if you can really get some productive tillers out of sorghum or something like that. But in Oklahoma, I think we don't have as much potential as in like Kansas talks about all the time on tillers on corn. I just don't see them as much in Oklahoma. 2 to 3 years on corn usually does not benefit you yield wise. If anything, it might drag your yield down a little bit. So I mean, there's some of those things that corn has walked its path, and it's going to be the yield we're at. The fortunate thing is I don't think it looks behind.
No. I mean, Bixby, I was there on Wednesday, and Bixby's probably the tallest corn I've seen at Bixby in a while, and the best looking corn, but that's because it hasn't set. Like, you were talking about these huge rains we get. Bixby's one of those places we get 8 inches and then nothing. And a lot of nothing. Has another 8 inches.
Water.
And so as far as the crop goes, I haven't seen that nice of corn at Bixby as far as clean and green and total biomass.
Outside of certain places, like Summit's talked about how the Panhandle's evapotranspiration rate is just massive right now because it's been so dry and it's windy and it's hot. I'm sure Southwest Oklahoma is the same way, but even around like North Central and then far east, we're so humid.
Yes,
that even if we aren't getting a ton of rain, I feel like our our transpiration rate and our evaporation rate are just lower than they have been in previous years. And so I think it's helping. We didn't need as much rain. And of course, corn can grow at a much lower temperature than, cotton and grain sorghums and stuff like that. And so I think it's put on its resources, and it's corn's really good at just continuing to slog on no matter what's kind of going on around it. Yeah. And so soybean are one of those that is very temperamental with what's going on around it. Corn's pretty good at just slogging through what it's going. And so we could get a little bit better ear size. Yeah. We could get a little bit better grain density, but we're not going to see the flexibility on yield that we potentially could have on grain sorghum or soybean.
And so this isn't just observations. He's actually a scientist, and he has some data.
Yeah.
And so briefly talk about some of the stuff that you have that backs up, not just this hypothesis, but your observations.
Yeah, so we had a student that was completely unrelated to this question a couple of years ago. Well, I mean, not unrelated, but the whole premise, coming out of 16, 17, 18, 19 years were our soybean are getting too big. We can manipulate planting, and whenever we did this project, a lot of growers are like, why don't you just plant later? And I'm like, I mean, you can, but then you run a risk of like moisture dynamics and running out of moisture and all this. So I mean, you can plant later, but so we looked at doing plant growth regulators on soybean. And did they help? Did they not? Did they actually shorten the crop? Did they not? And one that I kind of took a snippet out for the blog is we went to where is an old method that they used to do down in Louisiana and cotton a lot. They used to do it around cotton all the time, is we topped the crop. So basically we went through at various growth stages and we just took apical dominant. So it was not going to grow vertical any longer.
Yeah.
So we had a way that we could either do one of two things. We can either promote branching, or we can promote them now to use these resources to create yield. In really stressful years, that did a good job at protecting yield, and we saw a yield benefit from it. And just as the science would indicate and what we have known in non-limiting years, it didn't fall too far behind, but it was numerically lower than where the crop just was allowed to grow unhindered. Yeah. So there's some concepts to this. If we have a stressful time, a smaller crop does yield better than a taller crop in our environment, which is often moisture limiting. And I will stress that when I was back in Louisiana, or if you have a ton of irrigation, get that thing as big as you possibly can. But in our dryland environment, where moisture's typically, and even where we're talking about really nice looking summer crops right now, moisture still is in the back of my mind because we haven't gone through July yet.
Yeah.
And that's when usually moisture becomes an issue, is that last 2 or 3 weeks in July and that first week of August is where we need a rain typically to make something large actually come through and yield. And so we have the data to prove that in really low yield potential seasons, so 20, 30, 40 bushel seasons, a smaller crop is better. And really high yielding systems, so 40, 50, 60 bushel years, a taller crop is probably has some advantages too.
So let me ask it this. How do you make that determination if you need to top the crop? If you do need to start, manually giving the corn a haircut, how do you make that decision of this is where I need the top the plant to stop growing?
So it's not a practice I would recommend right now. Well, I mean, we went through and physically removed them back in the cotton days. They'd take blade cutters and cut off but it's not some, and we've tried looking at chemicals. In addition to the student looked at different chemicals, we weren't really able to control the growth that well using chemicals, very short term. So you're using chemicals to control that growth very, very frequently, just like you do in cotton. So, I mean, if you think cotton, if you're a cotton grower and you're also growing other crops, it's the same thing. If you were to use picks, and we actually use picks, if you use picks on soybeans, does it work? Sure, it does, for about 10 days.
Oh, okay.
And then the crop sometimes can grow faster than in those next 10 days.
You just made it angry.
Yeah, you've built up these resources, and if is if it hasn't pushed those to branches or anything else, now you have all these resources that now it thinks it has unlimited resources, and it's just going to get up and go.
Yeah.
So, and we saw the same thing in canola. We did PGRs in canola. We wanted them to be shorter going into winter. We could shorten that crop up, but we needed the freeze to come in at the same time, and we never could really pair that as well as we had hoped to. So it's one of those, can we control growth? Yes. Is it cost effective and efficient too in soybean? No. So it does kind of start to venture those questions, is if we are going to plant really early in the soybean season, we need to prepare that we're going to have some really, if we have the right season, we're going to have some really big plants. And we need mechanisms to take care of that plant. So hopefully, if you're planting that early, you have irrigation, you have supplemental irrigation, something like that. If not, it might be beneficial to think about later plantings to shorten that crop up a little bit. So,
well, and this is not a direct quote, but I've heard you say this previously. Many times, soybeans could just be a double crop, and as far as getting the height and the yield that you want or need, it has the potential for such a short growing season that maybe that might be a direction to look at in, adjusting planting date in the future.
Well, and I think that's why there's a lot of growers, the further west you go. Yeah. So when we're back east, we worked it with a lot of growers back on the east, is that they do like double crop because they still like wheat in their system.
Yeah.
But the yield limitation that they get between double crop and full season, the double crop yields so low comparatively. The further west you get, the closer these get to where, and sometimes growers are pretty insistent that their double crop out yields their full season.
Right.
We have consultants up in North Central that does not like their growers to plant before Father's Day. So, this weekend would be when you would plant.
Yeah.
And so it's, there's some validity to that, and the further west you go, the more viable double crop becomes compared to full season.
Right.
So, it is a way, because that double crops are typically very short compared to their full season counterparts, because their vegetative period is much lower. That's the premise for planting later, is the longer vegetative period you have, the bigger that vegetative growth can get. If you shorten that down by 2 weeks, then you just can't grow as much vegetation, so you can potentially just shorten that crop up a little bit. So the later you go, the double crop, the shorter that plant's going to be. It comes with its own unique set of challenges, but I think it's why the folks out west that typically deal with more extensive moisture limitation, like that double crop compared to some of the other systems, and just find more consistent yield from it.
So with the threat of a super El Nino or whatever, regardless, the potential of a changing weather pattern, do you see any of those, any crops adjusting their planting season for next year off of that?
I would hope not.
Yeah.
Just due to the fact that I think you asked this, is that when we were planting, did we expect this? And absolutely not.
Right.
So and we still, those short crops, they might come back and bite us if we get rain. If we look like this all the way through July, a taller crop would have yielded probably better. But there's no guarantee that July is going to be like this June has been. So it's just you're walking a line that I wouldn't fret, and I wouldn't start really changing just the whole farm practice. But it is one of those things, if you are running into years and years and years to where you're dealing with these tall crops and it's doing some really low and consistent soybean yields or sorghum yields or something like that, it is something to think about. Can I go a little bit later to shorten that vegetative period up to make this a little more feasible, or is that just not something that fits within my system? So the biggest thing is, I wanted to put that blog post out, is for the short soybean that we're seeing out in the field. It's not a bad thing. So don't think we've lost a tremendous amount of yield potential. Could we have lost some if the season turns out really nice? Probably, but if the season goes the way that seasons normally go in Oklahoma, we're probably in a better spot now than we were last year, or really the last couple of years.
So to switch gears just real briefly here, the wheat crop is all but in.
Yep.
Well, in the bins. Yeah. What would you? How would you look at it from a soil nutrition standpoint with everything that you saw in your yields across the state? I understand there's still a couple more fields that need to be cut, and you haven't had a chance to really go through the.
Well, you got a double bag there. So we've got a lot of ground that is under yielding. Even my stuff that was good is still not what it could yield.
Right.
At that same point, there was not a lot of people that spent money on fertilizer this year. In fact, fertilizer sales were down significantly as far as total volume going out. And so if you look at, everything south of I-40 where basically the wheat cut was cut for seed, and we're talking single digits, I don't expect many of them put on 80 bushel worth of nitrogen. So we're in a system where the probability is that we had little nitrogen. What nitrogen we have wasn't necessarily lost because it didn't have rainfall. We have some carbon going back in, so there'll be mineralization. But, I mean, more of what I talk about now is not about what happened last year. In fact, I don't put any credence to last year. So I don't talk last year's stuff for this year necessarily. I talk about fertilizer price. If it's starting to come down, a month ago I would have said with fertilizer price where it's at, don't look at nitrogen, especially on forages. Don't look at nitrogen. Don't look at phosphorus except for what you need. Look at potassium. Potassium was maintaining low cost, and still cost of K is much lower. So those locations that need some love with potassium, need a little bit more, this is a year to probably invest in that. Like Josh said, I've had more calls on lime recently.
Really?
Lime price hasn't gone up. They're not going to be doing a double crop. This year is the time. If you're looking at where do I put money in, if I don't want to pay 90-cent nitrogen or 90-cent nitrogen, cut that rate. Look at your phos. Phos is high. It's going to be higher for a while until things get back in. Just the way the phosphorus system, phosphorus lagged in price hike. We're going to see that go up and then fall later. K and lime maintaining their lower price. Make your investments in that and do what is needed on N and P, but don't go overboard.
So look into your crystal ball, and with the geopolitical things that have happened over the last really 2 weeks, with the strait hopefully being open, that helps with not only fertilizer, ships moving across, but also oil prices. Hopefully, I mean, gas prices have been coming down and stuff. So when do you see nitrogen coming down, or how far lag behind all of this geopolitical happenings do we expect to see nitrogen prices? I don't want to say go back to reasonable because I don't think they're going there. But
I'll put it this way. With one of the locations just north of us that I track, they do a great job, Two Rivers Co-op. They do a great job with their price. They readjusted urea on June 6th, and it went from 95 cents a pound to 74 cents a pound.
Wow.
So we've already seen, and watching Josh and them on X, Josh Linville, I think is his last name, really big guy, watches NOLA a lot as far as what's going on in the port. Urea is backing, which is really weird because the strait is always months out. Yeah. We're just now getting the last ship that left the strait.
Oh, wow.
And so everything's in a delay. So we're going to see nitrogen's already coming down for some of that stuff. The phosphorus is where I think our lag is going to be, and I expect phos to still have an opportunity to go up. We shipped out all the old product months ago, and the talk was Mosaic was going to slow production on their phos. And so I'm expecting where we see loss or our urea prices going down, I would say, your DAP and your MAP kind of stuff is going to maintain because it's switching the higher price of N for phos.
I know we talked a lot during the summer. We had the fertilizer checkoff meeting during the summer, and we're still in the summer, but the early parts of the summer, that availability might be low. Is that still a concern?
Well, on phos stuff, phosphorus availability is okay. A lot of the demand, everything was delayed in the Corn Belt. A lot of that demand, a lot of folks probably holding back on some of their inputs. So the availability's not been as bad. It's kind of improved, but our cost is the situation on that. I just checked. The potassium price is under 40 cents. It's 38. I haven't seen it. This is a price where when I started, it went up to over $1.10. And so I go back to lime, still about the same. Diesel costs is what's affecting lime as much as anything, and K is low. Invest in those.
I've seen I've seen the news of, we're opening the straits. We'll see if that holds. That's a day by day thing, but will there be just each one of those ships that make it out, with all this fertilizer that's held up in that area? Will we just see a dive in prices just because it's so backlogged, or is it a supply and demand thing?
It's supply and demand.
Yeah.
We're not going to see that. I mean, we've seen prices drop, but our price drop had nothing to do with real functionality of what's happening, because a week change or 2 weeks change from nitrogen going from almost $1 a pound of N on urea going down to 75 cents isn't because all of a sudden we opened the strait yesterday and the ships are here.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
There are other things within the market. It used to be nitrogen was 100% gas price. What was the price of natural gas? That was tracking. There is so much more with nitrogen, whether it's geopolitical, whether it's the companies in there, whether it's the movement of who needs it at what time.
Right.
Part of that is our price can drop now because the Corn Belt no longer needs it, so the repositioning of it, they're not shipping everything in Oklahoma North. We can reposition that closer here. So I wish we can get some of these folks that I follow on. Maybe that's what we do for winter crops, is try to get a Josh Linville or one of those guys in and talk that, because it's way beyond me. I'm just spouting what others say.
Right. Well, that's interesting. I was whenever they locked up the straits, I automatically thought of fertilizer, and then now that it's open, I just, in my mind, all these ships are going to be going out, and then the price of everything is going to drop. But that's an important part. The corn may not need it as much now. It's going to be moving to another part of the country. Another crop that hasn't even been planted yet may need it.
Other people need it. The thing about fertilizer now, if we look at fertilizer in the 90s and 2000s, is a very much our market. Fertilizer is an international market. What's China doing? What's Australia doing? What's Brazil doing? What's Argentina doing? Everybody's in this player's game, and in fact, we had old phosphorus that would have been cheap that Brazil was able to buy, and so we put it back on barges and sent it to Brazil.
So I guess that's a question I've had for you that I just haven't asked you, is that, since Brazil is almost becoming the dominant player in corn in the world, kind of, surpassing the United States, how much does their demand dictate how much we'll eventually get?
No, it's still who's willing. I think their demand, if they're willing, but you got to remember, so we talk about that. Their price support's tough. Their transportation is still what's lacking. And so they still have, we were looking at cost per ton. They're paying about the same that we were when I was down there.
Wow.
To where I was at in northern Brazil, right? It might have been different, but their diesel costs to get it and track it and just get across the roads, and they're not fun roads. And so, it's still going to be who is willing to pay for it is still going to be the win. So we're going to see, it's not going to be that people want to send the fertilizer to Brazil. It's that it's going to be a market play. Who's taking it? What's the tariffs looking like? Who's able to ship it? Who's able to send it? Are there agreements? Maybe it's coming out of Morocco. Is there something that makes it more friendly to go north versus south? It's more of that than just they need it.
Yeah.
Well, and this might be a good opportunity to take a left turn on this, but since we last spoke, you've been to Brazil, and kind of tell us why you went to Brazil and what you learned.
I was invited, and they paid for it. No.
And he got to go to Brazil.
Go to Brazil. I always enjoy that. Went to a new location, the state of Pará, and it was a farmers co-op that invited me. As a consultant that I've worked with for the last 15 years, just back and forth with WhatsApp and other things. And he's been in the States 3 or 4 times. He's been to Oklahoma twice. And I was just there speaking towards, agronomy, because it's new agronomy. They've only been doing it for 15 or 20 years.
Right.
Row crops are new for them. And really, he's an old soul agronomist, and there's a lot of new ideas floating around that aren't based in great science. So his whole point of bringing me in is like, just talk some of the basics, the principles. What I learned was that is some insane soil and environment they're dealing with. Old Amazon.
Yeah.
A soil that's 30 to 50 foot deep, and you have the same color, the same texture from top to bottom. 70% clay on average, with a CEC that's almost the same as a blow sand. I mean, almost no ability to hold cations, which as a soil scientist, those don't fit unless you understand that it's a tropical soil. That's the only way that works.
Yeah.
And so they get 6.5 foot of rain during 7 months, and then they don't get rain. I witnessed their last rain they were expecting for 5 months.
That's scary.
And their lowest low is 71, and their highest high is 86. It ranges between 74 and 84.
Holy cow.
Their corn, the craziest thing, so they grow corn on 20s. They can't market corn, so they're a straight soybean. They have no market demand for corn. Corn is only there for rotation. We have some crops like that we really grow for rotation. But I was there, and the corn was up, and walked several cornfields, and ear set was shoulder high on me. 180 bushel corn, shoulder high ear set. Now, our crop physiologist here, why is that?
Monster corn.
Huh? But thin. I mean, we're talking
really thin.
sugarcane thin, and light limitation. They are limited on light.
Yeah.
Their beans get sprayed with fungicide 5 times.
Yeah.
At least.
Wow.
And so it's just a completely different environment. They don't wait for the soils to get warm enough to plant. They wait for the soils to have enough moisture to plant.
Yeah.
Everything is contiguous, so we're talking fixed frame planters. They had not a single planter that folded, but we're talking stuff that's, 50 foot wide planters on 20-inch spacing. And they're planters, if you know planters, and I shared this on social media, that the guide wheels were not near the openers that we're used to. It's actually because of the heavy clay, it was set back 6 or 7 inches and wide, another 8 inches. And they said it's just because if we ran a planter that you run in the States, it would ball up in the first 100 foot, and we'd have to clean it up.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
I've dealt with those before.
It was new.
Huh. So you did have quite a few posts there, and tried to update folks. But what an opportunity! Do you see? Compare, and you did a little bit there, but compare the future of agronomics on the south side of, are they on the south side of the equator?
Yes.
On the south side of the equator versus on the north side of the equator where we are.
Well, I mean, the biggest difference is, and it goes more so as you go into the Corn Belt, is that they are new to farming, especially in that region.
Yeah.
And so the preconceived notions are nothing.
Yeah.
Which is kind of fun. It's like getting a grad student. There's at times I prefer a grad student that doesn't have preconceived notions about farming. Josh didn't have preconceived notions about how we have to grow crops in Oklahoma. I didn't either. There's some niceties about that, and that there's just a more open framework. So they're open, which also means they're open to a lot of stuff. And so they're getting hit by a lot of different things. But the problems, they think Americans have it great and they want to learn from us, and I think that they have some great things and we should learn from them. And both of us have a lot of opportunity, and there's opportunity to learn from both sides. Just seeing how they deal with nutrient management and just the mechanical management of their crops, integration of cover crops, and that. I did take a lot of take-homes in from that, of things that I can play with in our system. Not that we have wet, but, what are they doing to deal with the heavy clays and some of the management as far as planter depth and other things.
Well, and it has been raining, so that we may get to do some side of that, but I don't think it's going to rain that much.
Don't expect that much, Dave.
So
6 foot ain't happening around here.
Right. Well, this actually transitions really well. There's an event coming up in the end of July where folks can kind of learn a little bit about the crops here in Oklahoma, especially in the south central area of the state.
All right, July 27th at the Chickasha research station. We're going to have OSU Extension is doing a big demo day, summer crop demo day. We're going to have a lot of different speakers, a lot of different stops.
Yep.
Dr. Lofton's doing growth stage. We have the IPM specialist doing how to scout. So this is get off the trailer, go into the field. We're going to have hands-on activities. We're going to have a lot of groups going to different places because we want small groups. So we're talking 15 to 25 people per stop max, so that there's a lot of interaction with all the state specialists down in there and area agronomists. And so we're going to have tumbleweed millgrass. We're going to have irrigation nozzling demonstrations. We're going to have spray demonstrations with Dr. Long. We're going to have alfalfa talks, looking at, how do we do nitrate testing? So we'll have some fertilizer rates and some Sedan, some forage sorghum, and Josie and Burrow. Mr. Burrow is going to be out there doing nitrate testing and showing, how do we split? What are we looking for? Why don't we go high? Why would we look at a specific spot on the plant? And podcast is coming up later after this one is Dr. Adamson. So Danny and Dr. Haggard will jump into soil pit. We're going to talk soil health within a soil pit. Dr. Haggard's going to go back to her roots, I guess you might say, and talk morph and really dig into that. And so, really excited about what is going to happen at that field day. And want everybody there and hopefully make this event that happens. This is an event that you won't see everything, but we don't want that. We want there to be, man, I missed that. I got to come back next year.
Well, and the thing that I love the most about it is, like you say, you get off the trailer, you get to hands-on. Mm-hmm. We saw that with the sorghum experience last year, and the folks that actually got out there into the field and scouted for insects and were able to, as you were saying, this is indicated on the plant. They were able to go out there and actually see it right there. So this is another hands-on experience that's going to be a great opportunity.
And that's why we went with this. Is that sorghum experience up in Alva was such, I think, well received. It was like, let's make this bigger, have even more people, have all the things. And if this goes well, this is probably something Josh and I will maintain as a direction in our extension programs going forward. And the cool thing is Monday, that the 27th on Monday, that's an open field day for producers. The following day, we're going to have every state specialist there, and we're going to have hands-on time with as many county educators as possible and really use these as dual opportunities to gain both back and forth, the education part, but the community of extension.
Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. That's going to be that. Well, and because I'm just going to say, because sometimes there's turnover in extension offices, and they may not have that opportunity to go out with the state specialist and walk through the sorghum field, the corn field, or whatever, and actually see what they need to be showing the folks in their county. So yeah, that's awesome. Well, cool. Anything else you want to cover? Josh gave the thumbs up, so he's good. Got thumbs up from Brian as well. Now, you know where the thumbs up came from?
I'm afraid to ask.
Well, it's actually from the train lines.
Okay.
Jimmy Rogers. I learned that from a documentary. He gave the thumbs up because he was a brakeman on a train line, so that means that they're good to go, and then the world adopted it from there.
Awesome. See, I was afraid this was going to be another anhydrous. I was really worried.
Which my daughters love to roll their eyes now because of that. But anyway, that I guess with that we'll wrap up this episode of the Blazing Wrong podcast. Oh, what I meant was I had John Weir in my mind whenever I said that of the Red Dirt Agronomy podcast. So be sure and check back next time for the next latest one. It's going to be a good one. Thank you for listening in on this conversation of the Red Dirt Agronomy podcast. And if you'd like to join the next discussion, it's simple. Just leave us a message on our website on reddirtagronomy.com. And while you're there, you can find out more information about all of our guests, listen to past episodes, and check out all of the resources we discussed today and on previous episodes, all right there free of charge as well. For Dr. Josh Lofton and Dr. Brian Arnall, I am Dave Deken, and we all want to thank you for listening. The proceeding is a copyrighted recording of Agnow Media, LLC 2026. And yes, all rights are reserved.